who join this call on a regular basis. As I mentioned, I'm the founder and CEO of Entitle. I've had a long career in manufacturing, almost 30 plus years now, between being an operator as well as now being an entrepreneur in the software space. So the experiences I bring to you are not just from my decade building Entitle, but really all the experiences that I've had over the years as one of you, as I like to put it, right? So that's the kind of perspective I want to bring to the table, and I'm hoping that we share these ideas and insights with you that are beneficial to you as you go along. As always, this is a LinkedIn live session. We're also streaming it on YouTube. Let's keep it interactive. Let's please ask questions in the comment section. Unfortunately, last time we did get a question right after I logged off, so I couldn't answer it. I had to go back to LinkedIn and answer it later on. But if you can add these questions, that'll be great early on. And my colleague Nikhil has joined here, so he's monitoring the LinkedIn live session to see if there's any questions that come along. And then finally, we'll be able to share this recording with you post-event, most likely later today. If not for certain, by tomorrow, we'll post it back on LinkedIn so you can see the recording itself. And then, of course, in the YouTube channel, we'll have this thing shared as well. So many, many different ways for you to consume this information and presentation. So looking forward to that. So just to recap, as I mentioned early on, we've done a couple of these events. The first time we talked about just re-emphasizing the fact that an install base is an OEM's best friend, the way I like to put it. It really is an aftermarket revenue engine. But in many ways, it's really the growth engine for the OEM overall. And, we've talked about this multiple times, but it is not just the aftermarket revenue you get, but we see time and time again that for most manufacturing companies, your install base or existing customers are really the source of more than 80% of your equipment sales as well, right? So you're selling to the same people again and again. And so the install base becomes really valuable. So we talked about that in the first edition of LinkedIn Live in sometime in January, the 21st of January. Then we came back because one of the themes we've been seeing in our conversations with the customers is that more and more people wanted to understand, hey, Vivek, what do we do about account planning? How do you use this data for account planning, especially in the context of a service visit, right? So you have an install base, you have a lot of customers. How do you decide which customer to go with what proposal? And we kind of talked about that, and that we focus on what we call customer-centric planning, not necessarily building your revenue plan for yourself, but really thinking about your customer. In this case, we told a story about a fictional character, Sarah, and her 3 a.m. wake-up call when the line goes down and how you think about it. And it turned out that was a good framework for us to kind of continue. So today's call is now about how do you now take this in a very granular fashion, take these high-level ideas of your install base as a value engine, thinking about your planning for your visit, and now, okay, how do you really build a plan out here, right? So we said we're going to build a step-by-step plan on taking data into action and trying to build an account plan that's valuable for your customer. But the perspective we're taking today is bringing it from the notion of an asset lifecycle. It turns out that you as an OEM have extraordinary amounts of insight and data that nobody else has. And it relates to the asset lifecycle because you're seeing this across thousands of your customers, not just one or two, like your owner operators do. Right? So that's kind of the perspective we're going to take. In continuing the theme of writing and telling the story, we said, let's start in the case, we took Sarah, the customer, her 3 a.m. wake up call when the line goes down. In this case, we're going to take the protagonist being Jessica, who's the account manager, right? As you've seen in your company and many companies, most of our account executives, be it capital equipment or aftermarket salespeople, they have a huge number of accounts that they're responsible for. We've seen as many as 100, 150. In this case, we are, being a little bit more conservative, saying, okay, Jessica has about 47 accounts assigned to her, and like everybody else, she's living in spreadsheets, right? And it's just a mess. I mean, we've seen these spreadsheets with our customers. I wish we could share them with you today in terms of kind of what we see, but there's some wild spreadsheets that we see with our customers, right? So they're trying to figure out, she's trying to figure out how do I kind of take this thing forward? And then, of course, you have the always omnipresent boss saying, hey, Jessica, what's your plan for Q2, right? And so she's trying to scratch her brain saying, like, where do I start? What do I do? How do I kind of figure out what to get going? And so I can build a plan that makes sense, right? So that's the situation we see time and time again. And, where we are in this process now is, as you sit here in 2026, it is becoming apparent to us at Entitled that almost every OEM wants to do this, but they all have Jessicas. They all have the same problem that Jessica's facing. in terms of trying to figure out what to do and how to do it and when to do it and so on and so forth. So that's kind of what we're trying to bring to life here with this story, right? I mentioned this in the preamble that, as an OEM, you have this unfair advantage because you're sitting atop mountains of data about the assets you've designed, manufactured, and sold. And when I say mountains of data, it's not just bill of materials data, manufacturing data, or PLM data, but you now have historical information across thousands of assets and all your customer base. Oh, by the way, you also have that across everybody that your reps and channel partners don't have, right? So, as the saying goes, the first party data that's valuable is an unfair advantage that you as an OEM have, right? And so you have the ability to kind of start taking this information and start taking this data and building out some plans. So Jessica is the same, same situation as you guys are. She realized that, wait a minute, I have all this information from the life cycle of this data, if you may, from installation to commissioning to now in the maintain phase, trying to figure out what to do. And she realizes that as she looks at the install base across these 47 accounts that she has the ability to start building out certain plans based on what the life cycle recommendations telling her, right? It's a 5-year overall cycle. So who's in Q3 related to that? Who's at the certain life cycle, duty cycle mark in 10,000 hours? What's the protection pitch if somebody's warranty is expiring for newer customers and so on and so forth, right? These are all the things that, by the way, are all available to the Jessicas of the world, but they're always fragmented, they're always a mess, and they're trying to figure out putting it together is a pain in the ass, right? So, of course, the first thing is, hey, go organize the asset lifecycle information that you have, all the data that you have. You have this information in the ERP systems, you have it in spreadsheets. One of my colleagues just met with one of my customers today. He says, Vivek, there's 47 spreadsheets with 47 people today, right, in this company. And we're now trying to assemble these spreadsheets into a single source of truth for them, right? So go figure out the spreadsheets, bring them together, get recommendations from your trusted advisors in terms of what's going on, start tracking things, and start putting it in. Gather this information, right? There's all these different sources you have. And so the question then becomes, for Jessica, if she has 47 accounts and maybe she has 100 and something assets out there, 5 different product families, it's not that hard to do for an individual. So she could potentially build it in a unified single view on a spreadsheet, kind of start really looking at the spreadsheet by itself and saying, okay, what can I do? How do I do it? Where do I do it? And kind of start building this own little system for herself to kind of start getting clarity on what's going on in the install base. Right? That's one of the first things I would do if I were you. Start organizing the data. And by the way, you'll hear me say this if we ever get into a conversation. Perfect is the enemy of good. Start somewhere, please. Just start assembling this thing. It's going to be very valuable for you. So it's just start building it because you need to start getting some repetitions out here. So when you start looking at this information, I mentioned all these different sources, you're able to start figuring out how to use this data to manage the risk for your customer. Remember, while Jessica is a protagonist in this call today, Sarah is really the hero. The end user is really the hero of the story here, right? You're trying to make sure Sarah can sleep well at night. As I mentioned in the last thing, we're trying to sell Sarah peace of mind, not parts and service, right? And so the question is, how do you help Sarah manage risk using all this information? And the good part is you have lots of this information available. The question is, how do you want to start using it? I mentioned this selling peace of mind. So the question is, when we start looking at our customers' data, we literally have seeing spreadsheets with 200 rows where a customer's tagged every single part in the bill of material, all the kinds of things which are critical, non-critical, which backlog, what not backlog. That's all awesome. I think what you need to do is figure out a way to translate that into your customers' so what, right? So what this particular gear is backlogged 6 months. You're coming to the end of life of this based on reliability data. You may want to go ahead and place the order right now so we can get it in 6 months, or more importantly, preemptively place it so we can actually start building inventory for you, right? We can start figuring all these things out along the way and start making sure you go to the customer with a very specific recommendation set that speaks to them in their language with their critical metrics and their critical success factors, if you may, in terms of what needs to get done, right? So there's a lot of different things you can do with this data. It's everything from upgrades and modifications for performance, but definitely spares packages, preventive maintenance, all these different things that you guys are experts at. But it starts with the ability to understand the impact on the customer. What we've done at Entitle is, we this is kind of a quick snapshot. It doesn't mean you have to build a system like this, We built a system like this for our customers where we start tracking historical information. We bring in data from all these different sources. We're able to create a asset lifecycle map. It's almost like when you go to a shopping mall in the US or wherever, you look at the map and say, you are here. We can actually point this to our customers, like, you are here. For this particular asset, you are here, right? This is kind of what we need to get done. And we're able to start showing different actions that come up based on the historical information, based on recommendations and maintenance plans and recommendation plans that are built by engineers and that are augmented by real data across all your assets, right? That again, I keep coming back. You have this unfair advantage as an OEM that you have more data than anybody else does in this ecosystem. You need to find a way to use it, and you can use it this combination of asset lifecycle data, of recommendations, of manuals, and so on and so forth, right? So we've been able to put together this action center, right? There's an asset lifecycle map that I showed you in the first screen. There's an action center and the kinds of things you can do with your customers out here. And then the last part is, what do you do in terms of planning, right? So one of these customers that I mentioned, the spreadsheets we're building for them automation now, which is going to look something like this. They not just want to use this recommendation engine to go to their customers and recommend that they store spares or order spare packages, but they also want to go back to the supply chain people and start outlining the kinds of things they should be ordering in advance to kind of build up this ability to kind of have safety stock when needed. Because as you all know, the single biggest reason for customer dissatisfaction, your customer dissatisfaction, is long lead times and unavailability of critical spares when they need them. So it's not just you're doing a favor to your customer by being a recommendation partner, but you're helping your supply chain people plan better when you start thinking about what needs to get done based on criticality, lead time, and so on and so forth, right? So these are all powerful things that happen. Eventually, all roads lead to service of your customer and making sure you're selling peace of mind. So when you have this information, when you have the account plan map, sorry, account asset lifecycle map, you have the recommendations, you can now start building out this account plan, if you may, for Sarah, right? So, hey, when Jessica walks into Sarah's office, she can go with a very concrete plan that says, Sarah, I've looked at your install base. I've looked at all the different things that are going on. Here are the kinds of things I'm going to tell you, right? You have X machines. Here's the age distribution of these machines. Here's a risk associated with these machines. Here's a recommendation, and here's a value proposition. And you now have a very fact-based, customer KPI based way to have this conversation versus the old days of coffee and donuts, right? I mean, you now have this ability today that you can kind of go forward with a very specific part out here, right? And what I say to people, and we've again seen this with one of our customers where we're helping them build this plan out, you're going from guesswork to knowledge. That is really powerful, right? And so we're able to show these things in a way that your customer is beneficial, but more importantly, you as an OEM can benefit as well, right? So this is not all charity, right? You're at the end of the day, you have to build your own P&L to kind of get this thing going in a way. But if you focus on a customer, if you focus on an asset-based plan, you're able to go very factually. You can override all these emotional discussions that happen and really start demonstrating to Sarah how you're going to reduce the risk for her over time with this plan, right? And then those are the kinds of things that we see are coming to the forefront with pretty much all our customers now. So that's kind of how we think about building an account plan. These are the tactical 4 steps to get to this point, you know. And I said this in the beginning of the presentation, perfect is the enemy of good, right? Please don't wait for perfection. Start somewhere, right? Even in the case of Jessica, you don't need to do it with all 47 accounts. Do it with the first 5 accounts. Figure out what works. Start small. Start working that feedback, improve the next spreadsheet. Then take it to the next 20 accounts. Then take it to the 47. And when you start building that, you do 2 things. One is you learn from things that work and don't work and fix them. 2, you learn what you need to do in terms of being able to pitch to your customers and kind of build that script and muscle memory. And then 3rd, you then become the expert and trusted partner to your customer, and they're going to start calling you now, right? So these are the kinds of things you can do, right? And as this quote below goes, it's a paraphrase from one of our customers. It is rough. When you first started spreadsheets, you got to go back and forth. Most of our salespeople, certainly in the aftermarket, are not used to having these proactive conversations. They are invariably reactive. So these calls can be really rough. I can't tell you how many customers are coming to us and asking us to coach their salespeople. Yeah, how do you walk them through a call? What do you do about these things, right? So it's going to be rough. Don't worry about it. But you have to get going with it, right? And so eventually you'll build a system, you'll build muscle memory, and you're going to start scaling it up. So when you have one Jessica, you can go to the next two Jessicas and next 10 Jessicas and really build out a systematic, scalable account planning framework for your company, right? So that's kind of how we think about the very tactical steps to do it. We think there's a need for an install-based intelligence platform, a little bit of plug on entitle, right? But the point is that there is so much data that you need to start aggregating that don't wait for eternity. Just go ahead and start now. So with that, please, if you have any questions, put them in the chat box. Nikhil, if there's any questions, please put them on Slack so I can see it. But otherwise, for those of you, here's a QR code. Please scan it, reach out to us. Would love to kind of have this conversation with you. Like I said, we are seeing so many account planning conversations these days that we think the time now is for account planning to come out here. You know, uh, okay, well, Nikhil just pinged me saying there's a couple of questions that have popped up here. One is, what's the biggest blocker to account planning? Is it data access? Is it leadership buy-in, or just discipline from reactive to proactive? And I think I'd say it's a discipline, Nikhil, right? Everybody's muscle memories and institutionally are set to, I'm just going to take the phone call. As one of my customers said, Vivek, we know the 10 customers who are going to give us orders. We're going to call on those 10 people all the time, right? And so it's almost like there's a reactive or muscle memory around just going to what you know best. And so making that discomfort move happen is probably the single biggest thing. So it's almost like you need to coach Jessica to say, hey, it's okay to be uncomfortable. Go to the people you don't know. Go with an account plan you don't know. And if you want to kind of mitigate the risk, go at the tail of your customers, right? The people who, if you upset them, at least the risk is low. I mean, that's one way to manage this, but you have to start there. So I look at this, Nikhil, as the discipline from reactive to proactive is really the big thing. The second question is, do I need clean data before I start? And the short answer is no. There's a lot of sayings I've accumulated over time. The other favorite saying I have is data remains dirty till you use it. Until you start using your data to build your account plan and actually pitch it, you will not know this. Again, I'll speak to one of examples. One of my colleagues just met with one of our customers, local selling teams in India, and they were telling him, like, we just built this fabulous install-based intelligence system for a global company. We were training them in India this past week, and we found out that what we got from their systems, in this case, is 2 or 3 different ERP systems and service systems, wasn't matching with what's in the field because the information was not old enough, but B, there's some changes that had happened in the customer that only the people on the ground knew about it, right? And until you start using it, you won't know what's missing, you won't know what's broken. And so the idea is to start using it before you start trying to get perfection, because you're never going to get perfection before you start, right? So those are the couple of simple examples that I can give you in terms of what you need to do in terms of clean data, and also the muscle memory in terms of being able to go from discipline from reactive to proactive. Nikhil, any other questions here? Otherwise, we're doing generally pretty well in keeping this track to 20 minutes with our sessions. If there's no other questions, maybe we can wrap it up. But I don't know if there's any questions on LinkedIn. A couple of questions came in late last time, so I'll give it a second here before I go ahead and log off. Otherwise, okay. Nikhil's not seeing any questions yet, but I'm going to hold for about 10, 15 seconds to kind of give any late breaking questions to come in. But I think, folks, what I would say to you is that the ability for you to start doing something with your data is powerful. Again, very few people have this capability. Very few people have the luxury of this data that you have. And I would recommend you to start somewhere, start soon, and just find ways to get going with this thing, right? So that's kind of my ending recommendation. So, Nicola, I don't see anything from you in our Slack channel, so I'm assuming there's no other questions. Folks, with that, I thank you again for joining this. I know in the middle of a workday is hard, but we've been heartened by the fact we always see a bunch of people join in, and more importantly, lots of people then log in and listen to the recording. So we're very excited by the fact that we can create these things for you. We'll probably be putting out a schedule for the next few LinkedIn Live events in the next few days. As always, our inspiration for these events comes from our customer calls. So these are all practical, real life challenges that our customers are facing that we like to bring to you, and hoping that you benefit from this as well. With that, folks, thank you very much. I really appreciate your time today, and we'll be in touch. Have a good day.